Hey, you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it, but this is the third time I made this video for you. So let me get to the chase. I had a cell phone uploading thing happen in the middle of the last one. It totally fried it. Anyway, this is Professor Leonards, and I'm going to be talking about the the do's for your poetry, not the don'ts. Okay, so let's talk about that and go from there. Let me see if I can get this lighting just a little bit better. Maybe that's a little better. I'm not sure. Okay, that's life. Anyway, again, we're going to be working on the do's in this video for your poems. Number one, do realize that your poem is made of sentences. Because it's made of sentences, it will have to have some kind of grammatical sense, if you know what I'm talking about. It shouldn't, it sits together as sentences on a page that are broken up in various ways. And because they are broken up in various ways, hey, that's better. Because it's broken up in various ways, what you want to do is think about how grammar will affect your line breaks. Now, this happens because when we're speaking, many times we pause in different spots. And you may find that your poem wants to be broken. Its line breaks will be derived by where you would normally pause in a sentence. That's not a bad thing for a poem that is a free-form poem necessarily. So consider that. Consider also in the grammar of your sentences how you repeat certain things, how you can make lists in sentences. You know, you have lists of adjectives, you have lists of ing verbs, you have lists of verbs themselves, whatever they are. Those lists are very much an element of poetry, so don't forget that. So we're going to use grammar, we're going to use sentence structure as a natural way to build poems. Now, when you're using language, this is my second idea for you to think about. When you're using language, poetry is concentrated language. So poetry is word art that is concentrated language in sentence structure form. And those sentences are arranged upon the page however we feel like doing those to create the stanzas and the lines. Okay? I'll talk about lines and stanzas later. But so the kind of language you want in poetry, do not use antiquated, archaic language. No these, thous, and all that stuff. And don't use, just don't. Instead, use everyday language. And that everyday language is not, language necessarily of prose. Prose is a little more loose in its style. You have so many more things to put into a prose piece, like a short story or something that, some kind of okay sentences will get by and it'll be fine. But in poetry, you can't do that. In poetry, really, your sentences are concentrated and your language is concentrated. So you need language that has muscular verbs. These are awesome verbs. Spend some time on those verbs. Spend some time on getting specific word choices and details. Don't say tree, say oak. Don't say oak, say liquid amber. Don't say liquid amber, say American sycamore. Don't say American sycamore, say white birch tree. Whatever it is, get specific. And as a writer, you should be collecting specificity. How many types of apples can you name? This is something that I say a lot. And students are like, what? And I'm like, I can name 20 apples. You should be able to do the same thing, and that might take a little bit of time, okay? So you want to use specific language. You want to, third thing you want to do is you want to show things and not tell them. And I know we say this all the time, but what I mean by that, it's a cliche in creative writing, but what I really mean by that is, if I want to show you how much my mom loved me and how much time she took, to make me the person I am today, the last thing I want to do is just say my mom loved me and she really worked hard for me. First of all, I don't like abstracts in poems. I want to get rid of most of those. So I'm going to get rid of the word love whenever I can. It doesn't really translate well into poetry. Instead, I'm going to show. So one of the things I may do is show my mother in the way. I might say, whenever I think of my mother, I think of her hands. And then go from there and show her hands working and doing all these things that now I understand how much love go into doing those things and what they mean to me today when I think about them. So what I would say for you is, again, don't use the abstract. Use the specific to prove an emotion. Let the emotion be contained in the objects in your poem that you're describing and in the actions of the poem. Okay? And in if you have a character, somebody speaking or whatever, somebody that you're observing, whoever it is, those elements convey the emotion. Let's try to not ever use an emotional term, unless it's a surprising, unusual term. That gets me to a third idea with poetry. Poetry should surprise us. It has magic because it combines ideas in unexpected ways. So we want to really do that. You can do that even more than you can many times in prose because the expectation is different. We have concentrated language. I'd like you to take advantage of that. And so what I recommend is writing almost all of your poems 20 lines or less, maybe 15 lines or 10 lines, and really limit that amount of the amount of lines. The reason I would do that is because poetry, like many art forms, really benefits from having limitations placed upon it. So as a writer, when we say I'm going to write a 15-line poem or at most 20-line poem, now we have to prove that less is more. And it'll keep you from telling a story. It'll allow you to be more lyrical, and it'll allow you to juxtapose, which is a wonderful word, to put images together that don't normally go together to get your idea across. That's huge. So you really want that as a writer. The next thing you should be doing in the do list is that you should try to eliminate anything that's not necessary. And I believe adverbs are largely, I just use one, unnecessary. So you want to eliminate them, okay? In my poems, I'm looking for saggy language. Get rid of that. If I could say it in 5 words and it's what I wanted to say, get rid of the other 5 words if it was 10 words, okay? Just try to get rid of the excess baggage. And that's the miracle of poetry. So the line breaks, like we said, will probably take care of themselves initially in the first draft. Expect to revise your poems and expect again to go with a less is more approach so that you're trimming. We want your poems to be lean. We want everyday language. We want to have muscular, powerful language, and we want it to be presented as language that is easily read but deep and rich. Okay? And if you do that, you're going to probably get a good draft and maybe you'll get a good poem. Remember, really good poems sometimes come all of a sudden in a draft or two, and sometimes we have to work really hard to make that poem a good poem. And you never know, that's just what happens. But let's also stop making sense all the time. Okay? Stop trying to make the reader understand what you're saying exactly, and let the reader discover the meaning through the images. Okay? Trust the reader. Please do that and allow the reader to come to the magic, which is, in terms of your poem, will be how you're able to say how you feel about something through simply describing it and not telling us how you feel. Get the emotion out as a word and bring it in through the images you're using. Now, don't forget the images are the secret, and an image is a sensory rich bit of language. Let's not make it any more complicated than that. Okay, so you're going to try to strive to have those images. You're going to stay away from those abstracts. You're going to use everyday language. You're going to use your breaks in your poem, the line breaks, which will probably be natural, or you may play with them and see what seems to work best. The other thing I would say is you should never center a poem unless there's an absolutely amazing reason to. Most beginners will do that, and I recommend do not center poems. I recommend that your poem should be single-spaced in the stanza, and then you double-space between stanzas. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about formatting your poem, which is where I'll talk about lines, stanzas, and things like that. Okay? So this is Professor Leonard signing off with the do's. The worst thing that happens ever is that the poem just didn't work. Oh, well, let me try another one. Okay? All right. I will talk to you in another video shortly. Bye-bye.